Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse, and thank you so much for joining me live tonight for Sunday with Seth. Today we have, I'd say, what would be a really fun show to be doing together tonight. I wasn't really feeling like covering the news, so I just want to kind of just go completely to left field to just have some fun. So that's what we'll be doing tonight. We're going to be talking about what you might call hidden history, asking the questions of, was there a civilization or multiple civilizations that may have been even more advanced than our civilization that were before us, is that being hidden from us? What's that timeline look like? And so we'll be asking a lot of questions like this. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this subject. It's something that fascinates me. I've got a lot of books on it. I've watched a lot of My Lunch Break on YouTube. And so the purpose of today's show is not to go deep into any one area, but just to ask questions together. And that's what I love doing. I love finding a topic, whether it's an assassination or a war or a policy or something we've been taught supposedly in schools. And I love just taking it apart piece by piece and asking questions and saying, well, okay, if that happened, then what led to that? And oftentimes that's how I get to what I believe to be a closer version of the truth, even though we live in a world of lies, is just through asking questions. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to be taking a look at the World's Fairs in particular. That's kind of the main chunk of today's show, but then looking at orphan trains, Cabbage Patch Kids, just a whole variety of things, the insane asylums, and a lot more. So this will be a enjoyable show. Just to remind you, if you're in the chat live, thank you. I've got Rumble and YouTube chats I'll be pulling up throughout the show. Thank you for being here live. And also for YouTube, if there's new people on YouTube, it seems like there's been a shift with my YouTube channel that it's actually starting to open up more. My channel was suppressed for a really, really long time. I think probably from the very beginning. But somehow we've been growing. Big thanks to my producer and her team, Kay. But also something's changing. And so we're getting a lot of new people coming on YouTube. I think we added 10,000 new subscribers in the past month alone on YouTube. So this is exciting. So if you're here on YouTube, thank you for joining. I'm glad to have you here. And before we jump into the episode, just a quick reminder. Make sure that you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Leave a comment. Whether you agree, disagree, hate me, it doesn't really matter. Leave your comments. I love reading them. And also want to remind you that every show that I do is a podcast as well. So if you want the audio only version, just go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Search for Man in America. You'll find me there. And if you're already listening on Apple Podcasts, I have a special message for anybody listening on Apple Podcasts. If you want to make my day, just go leave a review on there. Actually, our podcast numbers are growing as well. I was looking at that before the show and seeing that on Apple Podcasts in particular, we're actually going up in numbers on there, which is great. So if you're watching or listening on Apple Podcasts, go leave a review. It helps their algorithm to reach more people. And that's it. So thank you. Let's go ahead and dive in. Actually, before we dive right in, I'll just pull up the chats real quick just to give a quick hello. Looks like the YouTube chat is still waking up. That's okay. We've got a few people on there. So hope you see some of our good friends. Yeah, Philip Palmer, one of my favorite subjects. And also, just let me know what you think about this kind of content. Because I've thought for a while about maybe doing a different channel on hidden history or doing some series on it. I'd love to see what you think though, because it's outside the normal, kind of perspective of data centers and censorship and the deep state and all that. It kind of ties into it a little bit. But I'd love to hear your feedback specifically on an episode like this, which is not about analyzing current events or anything. It's actually looking deep into our history. So again, I look forward to seeing your feedback on that. Over to Rumble. Yeah, Rumble is just popping and booming as normal. Yeah, see, Jay Smear, I love My Lunch Break on YouTube. Yep, shout out to My Lunch Break. Yes, he's a great YouTube channel. Yeah, Jilly Bean, I talk about your show on YouTube. Thank you. I love all of you all. Thank you. PMAX 1765 just says Q. Not sure what you mean by that. Maybe you're a Q guy. If so, maybe I'll ruffle your feathers a little bit. We'll see. So, okay. Anyway, yeah, let's go and just dive in. Excuse me. Sorry, my throat's a little scratchy as usual. I go clear voice spray. Okay. So jumping in, I've got a little bit of a presentation to give you tonight. It's kind of loose, which is how I do things. But let's go just jump right in though. Okay. So let's just take a look. So I want to start with the World's Fairs, because the World's Fairs, these are the things that make the least sense. When you look at the World's Fairs, and I'll get into it, this is the area of our history that to me is kind of like the most head-scratching. It's like, okay, you're lying about something and it's really obvious that you're lying about something and you're covering up. Like, that's what the World's Fairs are. So let's just kind of get into an overview of, okay, what were the World's Fairs? So these were they were around the world, but it was specifically the big ones that we focus on. They're ones in America. Okay, so it's America's Great Expositions, where they raised entire cities of these marble white palaces, drew tens of millions of visitors, and then they vanished overnight. Okay, so this is the official story. So the official story, okay, is that from the 1870s to 1910s or so, the U.S. hosted a string of enormous international expositions. So each one was a temporary kind of instant city of grand halls, domes, lagoons, gardens that were built to celebrate national anniversaries and to show off the newest technology of the age. So they were where the public first saw the telephone, the Ferris wheel, large-scale lighting, motion pictures. A lot of inventions were kind of featured at the World's Fairs. Crowds came by the millions, traveling across the country or international even to kind of walk the grounds and look at stuff. So the scale was like massive, okay? So the biggest fairs covered over 1,000 acres and contained more buildings than many real cities of the era. So this is the official story. Okay, let me just find a picture of. Okay, so this right here is a picture of the Chicago, right? It was called the White City. So this is a picture of the Chicago World's Fair exhibition. Okay, which I'll get back into that. This is a map of the World's Fair that was in Buffalo, New York. So, and this was literally like this was a standing kind of city. Okay, like look at the scale of this, and I have a lot of pictures to show you. So the official story, though, okay, let's take a look at some of these buildings, right? Okay, this right here was the Louisiana Purchase exhibition. So this is 1904. The official story is that they built all of these buildings over the course of like 1 to 3 years, and that they used this stuff called staff, which was like a plaster. It was kind of fibrous, with different kinds of materials, and then they used like wood frames and metal frames. So the story is that they built these massive cities, sometimes over 1,000 acres, over the course of 1 to 3 years, using kind of fake materials, not using marble, limestone, etc., but using plaster. And they create these massive cities just to have these World's Fairs exhibitions for maybe 6 months. And then they destroyed the whole thing. Okay, so this is literally the official story. And if you search for Tartaria, World's Fairs, you're going to find tons of articles debunking it. They call it the QAnon of architecture. They're calling it the conspiracy theory. So they really attack this idea that these fairs were anything but what they were. But even without getting into the strange details of it, the fact that they built these massive, massive cities with these towering structures, I've got photographs of them, but then they just destroyed them all. It's just like, it doesn't add up. It's very strange. So let me go back to my little presentation here. Okay, so again, These palaces were built from this stuff called staff, right? It was a cheap, moldable mix of plaster, cement, and fiber, typically jute or hemp, over a wood and iron frame. So despite looking like permanent stone, they were designed as temporary structures. Construction typically was 18 months to 3 years, even for hundreds of buildings, right? It's kind of wild. And then once a fair closed, the buildings were demolished almost entirely, usually within a single season. Like they had these specialized firms that would come in and just wreck and just destroy the entire fair. And then kind of sell it for scrap metal. But then what's interesting though is that we'll be getting into this, is that a couple buildings would kind of survive. So they'd build these fake buildings, but then some of the buildings they'd built were supposedly the real buildings and they're still standing today. But those were the ones that they built for real. Okay, which we'll get into that. So let's just take a look at a handful of the major U.S. fairs. So in 1876, they had the Centennial Exhibition, right? So again, this is 100 years after 1776. Okay. Now, this exhibition was built on 285 acres. It had over 200 buildings. It took 18 months alone to build the main hall. So this was the first official U.S. World's Fair, which is marking 100 years of independence. So its main exhibition building was the largest building in the world at that time, but then it sold for scrap in 1881. Okay, so they literally built the world's largest building, okay, at that time for some temporary fair that may have lasted less than a year. Okay, look at the building. Let's see, I think I have it. This is a postcard image of the building. So they literally built this building in the late 1800s. Look at the size of this thing. It was the world's largest building at that time. They built it for this fair, and then they destroyed it and they sold it off for scrap metal. Okay, so that doesn't make much sense to me. Why? Okay, that's a lot of work. Even if it was even if it was made out of cardboard, it's a lot of work. But going back into, kind of looking. So that was a Centennial Exhibition. Okay, so the next one was 1893. And this is kind of like the famous one people talk about. We talk about these World's Fairs. This was they called the World's Columbian Exhibition, aka the White City. And this is in Chicago in 1893. So it was built across 690 acres and it had about 200 buildings. And it took about 2 years. Okay, so think about this. Okay, we're talking late 1800s. Okay, so they didn't have any of the equipment that we use to build things. They didn't have excavators. They didn't have bulldozers. Even the rail system was still at that time. We had a rail system, but it wasn't nearly what we have obviously today. So, but think about this, right? Your main tool that you're using shovels, you're using horse and carts to pull things, railway. And so supposedly they built this, and I'll show you a picture of this, right? So telling us that it took about 2 years to build this entire exhibition, which was almost 700 acres with 200 buildings, okay? So look at this. This right here is a picture, right, from the exhibition, okay? So let's just look at this picture alone. Let's just analyze it a little bit. They're saying that, okay, I'll show you this. Here's another view. This is another view of the same, not the exact same location, but this is also showing the World's Fair in Chicago. So they're telling us that they built all of this in 2 years in the late 1800s with no modern construction equipment. But the thing is it's not just the buildings, right? So say these were cardboard buildings, or as I say, plaster buildings. Like, think about all the land work involved. Think about the excavation just to create a lake like this, to do all of this. Because you can see the architecture is built around the water. So that's a lot of work just to get the land ready. Okay, look at this again right here. Like, so you're telling me all these steps and fountains and these bridges, this is all just plaster? Okay. It just, I don't know. To me, it doesn't really add up. There's something off, which I'll be getting into the idea of what was really going on, because it's really, really interesting. And again, I'm not here to tell you this is the truth or this is what's happening. I'm just asking questions, and I'm looking for answers that make sense. And the answers that make the most sense about explaining these fairs is not the official narrative, and we'll be getting into that. Okay, so this is Chicago's White City. I mean, look at the scale of this. Like, this is more impressive than Washington, D.C. Like, this is absolutely incredible that they've got here, the fountains and everything. Okay, so that's Chicago. Okay, that's the White City. So, okay, this was the most famous of all. Okay, this is the Gleaming White Staff Palaces with a uniform 60-foot cornice line. But there's still a Palace of Fine Arts, which is now the Museum of Science and Industry, that's still up from it, we'll get into that. Okay, so next is Buffalo. So Buffalo, their fair was called the Rainbow City. It was in 1901, and it was 350 acres, and supposedly it was built in 20 months. Okay, just check this out. Let's go into the Rainbow City. Okay, this right here, this is a map of the exposition. Okay, so they're trying to convince us. The official story, right? Unless you're some crazy, crack job conspiracy theorist like me, the official story is that they built this entire thing in 20 months so they could hold a fair here, and then they're going to just demolish it all after, say, 6 or 12 months after they're finished using it. That's the official story. And you're crazy if you question that official story. Let's take a look at some of the actual details of the buildings here, okay? So there's the map we just looked at. Now, the whole thing was lit up, keep in mind, okay? So they had electricity at that time. So all of the building, they had millions of light bulbs, and all of the buildings were completely electrified with electricity. They'd light up at night. Okay. I mean, look at this right here. Look at this image. I mean, this is an actual picture. This, I think, was the Hall of Music, that big kind of domed hall in the middle there, in the front. People were lining up to go to some event there in the Hall of Music. So this was part of it. So again, keep in mind, okay, this is the big map. So what we're viewing right here, I think, is maybe one of these little buildings in here. That's all. So when you look at this, different one right here. You look at that building. Yeah, I think that's this one of these buildings right here. So look at the detail. So again, they're telling us that this entire complex, which was spanning hundreds and hundreds of acres with over 100 buildings, that they built it in 20 months. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just too skeptical and I'm too conspiratorial, but that doesn't make sense at all. Like, it doesn't make sense at all. But continuing. Okay, so that was in Buffalo. Okay. Now continuing here. So then we had the Louisiana Purchase Exposition. It gets crazier. So the Louisiana Purchase Exhibition was 1,200 acres. Okay. 1,200 acres with over 1,500 buildings. Okay. So 1,200 acres with over 1,500 buildings with 75 miles of roads and walkways. So they built this all probably in about 2 or 3 years. They built this entire thing just to put on some world fair and show people inventions, and then they're just going to demolish the whole thing. Okay, let's here's some pictures. These are pictures from the Louisiana exhibition. Okay, the Louisiana Purchase Exhibition. I mean, look at the scale of this. Okay, look at this. Look at these guys. Look at this little guy here. Look how small he is. Look at these people. Look at the size of that building. Look how small a person is next to these columns. I mean, and these weren't just like kind of brutalist modern buildings. I mean, these are beautiful buildings with sculptures, and look at the work up top. So they're trying to tell us that they built a 1,200 acre complex of these buildings right here that we're looking at, with 75 miles of walkways. I mean, look at the landscaping, fully landscaped. Think about the grading, even the land grading to prepare for this. I mean, even in modern America, if people were going to build this, it would take years and years to build this. 1,200 acres over 1,500 buildings. I mean, look at this obelisk right here. Look at the scale of that obelisk. And you can see too, look at these light bulbs, right? It's these things were electrified. They had light bulbs, street lamps. And this is a real photograph taken. Okay, this is the Louisiana Purchase exhibition. Here's another picture. Like, beautiful canal. So you're telling me that for some temporary fair, they literally cut out rivers. They like built canals and lined the canals with plaster. They built bridges that would somehow support people walking over them. And they did all of this in 2 years. Something is really, really, really suspicious here. Here's another picture. And look at these grand fountains and massive buildings. And here's another one. Look at the size of this. And one last one here. I mean, just look, even think about the land. Think about the process of grading all of this land. Because, I do work around my house. I'm just, finishing building a waterfall. And I can, like, land work is not easy, right? Whether you're building a house, or, you get to bring, people come in for a couple of weeks sometimes with bulldozers and excavators and all this. And so it seems so like silly that this is the official story, that this is all just fake, that they faked all of this and then they just destroyed it. It just doesn't make sense at all. Okay, so continuing. So that was the Louisiana Purchase exhibition. Okay, so this is the largest fair ever to be built at that point. Palaces the size of several city blocks each. Supposedly they're all made of like fake plaster. It says the Palace of Agriculture alone covered 23 acres, a 23-acre build. I think actually that this image I showed you, wrong one. I think that this might have been the Palace of Agriculture. Okay. So, yeah, I don't buy it. Okay, continuing. The next one, the Panama Pacific International Exhibition. Okay, so this was in San Francisco, in 1915. And they said that it was open for 10 months, and then they just destroyed the whole thing. 636 acres. The crown jewel of it was this building called let's see, I got it pulled over here real quick. The Tower of Jewels. Okay, so this is the Tower of Jewels. This is at night when it was lit up. So the whole thing was lit up. And here is a daytime picture. This is an actual photograph from this exhibition. And so now again, think about what America was like at that time. According to, I grew up watching Little House on the Prairie, right? You're thinking, okay, 1800s. Yeah, you have some bigger cities, but you're still crossing the country either on a train, or you're doing like covered wagon with horses, and you're using shovels. Maybe, I think they had steam engines at the time. But anyway, like, you're telling me that they built this structure out of plaster just for some World's Fair, and then they were going to just demolish it? It doesn't make sense at all. Now, let's kind of explore the idea of what was really going on there. Okay? So, the other angle. Okay, let's flip it around. So, The pattern is always the same. It's these enormous, ornate, stone-looking buildings they appear, they get photographed, they draw millions of people, and then they get erased. They get basically wiped off the face of the earth. But here's the question, okay? And this right here, and I don't have the answer to it, but to me, this is the question that makes sense. What if these buildings were never built for the fairs at all? But what if these were already standing and they were left behind by an earlier civilization? Okay? So in this perspective, these fairs weren't a celebration. They were the cover story. This public spectacle that was staged to explain why all these grand structures exists, and then they were destroyed. Okay? And it's also true. And if they were truly so cheap and temporary, why spend so much money and effort to completely tear them down? Which is also a lot of work. And also one of their questions is that the survivors, right? The surviving buildings are the puzzles, right? Because there's a handful of buildings that are still standing that were supposedly some of the buildings in these fairs, but the architects built those ones as the real versions, and those ones are still standing and they're still in use today. But again, going back to this question, to me, this is the question, and I'm not going to try to give you the answers to it. I'm not going to go into the details of it. I'll probably do some more shows on this depending on how the feedback is, right? But what if all these buildings were actually, this is where it gets kind of crazy. Let's pull up one of these pictures, right? Look at like this right here, or this. Like, what if this was a civilization that was on the American continent, when it was a previous kind of era of humanity that was in America, right? We're talking in the 1800s. Now, I'm not sure in terms of the timeline of what happened to whoever actually built these. I don't know. Right. I'm not going to try to get into that, because once you start asking these questions, it's so far reaching. Right. It's like, okay, who were they? Where they come from? And there's a lot of explanations to that, but that's much, much deeper research. There's this whole volumes of research on this. But the idea, though, is that what these buildings were, all these World's Fairs buildings that we're looking at, right? What if these buildings were actually from a civilization that existed here in America? What if the whole idea that Christopher Columbus just sailed across the world, he discovered this beautiful land of America that just had these Native Americans running around with kind of bow and arrows and hunting buffalo and riding horses and sleeping in teepees? Like, that's the history that we've been told. We've been told that basically before Columbus came, before the whites colonized America, that America was just a bunch of Indians running around, killing each other and trying to live in harmony the best they could. That's what they've told us. But what if that entire story is a lie? I mean, think about modern day America now, or just the world right now, right? Even an event that happened 6 months ago can be completely changed and covered up, right? Like, look at Charlie Kirk assassination as an example. Right now, it's like you have this kind of fringe group of people that are in some part that are still questioning things, but the official story is already in the books, right? Lone gunner, here's the story. Okay, FBI says this is true, move on, right? This was less than a year ago, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And so now go back to 9/11, right? 9/11, it's like they just glossed over that. It's like, okay, here's the official story in the books. Even go back to World War II, right? If you go and start looking deep enough, you'll find out there's a lot of lies about these wars, a lot of lies about what was happening in World War II. So the idea that they could create a lie, and we're talking about 150 years ago, right? Over 100 years ago, it'd be very easy for them to create a new version of history that they do all the time, right? So that they can do it for 10 years ago, they could do it for 100 years ago, very easily. And so that's kind of fascinating to me, because, in this process, and I'm sure you're kind of going through the same process too. It's this process of awakening, of realizing that all these things that you thought were true around you are actually lies, right? It's this understanding that you kind of come to this place where you realize that, wow, we live in a world where we have this kind of manufactured reality surrounding us, that we're told what our history is. We're told what happens with politics. We're told, how the human body works. We're told, pharmaceutical, kind of narratives. Like, we live in a world where, like, we're literally, it's like we're in this matrix, I guess you could say, where the world around us is there's so little truth, and they've hidden so much. I mean, you get into the Smithsonian, you start looking at the Nephilim, you start looking at the giants, you look at, ancient architecture, all these different things, previous civilizations of man, that whoever the controllers are, that if he's okay, were they in control in the 1800s? Most likely, my research has pointed to the fact that they've been in control for a very, very long time, in fact. But the idea that these evil people who've been controlling our society and control so many things around us right now, they've been in control for a very, very, very long time. You could say that it would be potentially feasible that they've created a completely alternate version of history that's being sold to us, right? They're telling us that we evolved from monkeys. They're telling us that they put a lander on the moon. They're telling us all these things that, and for a lot of people, they just believe them. But when you start to peel away some of the different lies and the cracks in the narratives, you start to realize that, wow, it's like, what is actually real? And so some people might say, okay, Seth, yeah, you question Big Pharma, you question the government, but now you're questioning this Tartaria stuff and the World's Fairs, and you're kind of off the deep end. It's like, well, if they're lying to us about what happened yesterday in Iran, you think they're going to tell us the truth about what happened 150 years ago, right? So this is kind of the idea, right? The idea is that now, whether there's different kind of ways you look at it, whether this was the Tartarians, whether it was, I don't know the specifics on that, and I'm not going to be getting into it in today's show. But when I look at all these pictures, and I look at this and I compare it with the story that they're telling us about these World's Fairs, to me, it makes a lot more sense that these structures were already there, that there was some sort of a very advanced civilization living in America that was wiped out. Now, again, I don't know whether you get into the mud floods or there's different, kind of ideas about what wiped out this civilization. But to me, that story makes more sense when I piece it all together, is that this civilization, now, there's a lot of information that they supposedly had the ability to harness energy. So like, Tesla with ether. If you look at a lot of the buildings, you see a lot of the same kind of design themes too. The domes, the spires. So there's a lot of information that kind of goes into talking about how they had different abilities to harness energy. So, these are things that for the current controllers, the elites that govern this world, that rule so much of, the world that we see, they don't want us to know that this is potentially our real history, right? Because, look, I'm an American, and, I've tried so hard to kind of dig into my roots, and my roots go back into, kind of Scotch-Irish, and my parents came out, kind of part German. But, a lot of us are rootless. Imagine you discovered that this idea that, okay, ancient Rome with like the Colosseum, and you have these buildings. It's like, well, what if something like that existed in America, and a lot of these buildings were still standing even 100 years ago? But then, if you think about the idea, though, okay, so why the whole plot with the World's Fairs is because if you're looking at how you can write the history for this, like how do you wipe out this previous civilization? This civilization that would show humans that they are far more capable than they want us to believe, right? How would you wipe this civilization out and get away with it? And the World's Fairs, it's kind of a brilliant idea, is that you create these World's Fairs, you invite all these people to visit these huge cities, you tell everyone there. Now, maybe people knew they were real at that time. It's hard to say. People, if they say, oh, it's all plaster, you could probably walk up and start knocking on a big old kind of limestone column and realize it wasn't plaster. But in terms of the history books, it's a really easy explanation as to what happened to all this architecture. To say, oh, that wasn't real architecture. Those weren't real buildings and real cities that already existed in America. Those were just fake ones that we built and we tore down. And then there were all these big fires, like the Chicago fire, which destroyed all these buildings. And there were all these fires around that time, and all these really magnificent buildings just burned down. It's a pretty easy narrative if you think about it. Let me pop over to the comments. I'd love to see what everyone's saying over here. Yeah, there you go. Kimberly on YouTube. Seth, they have lied to us about everything. I mean everything. The truth will set you free. I agree. Yeah. Missouri man, Oregon Energy. Yeah, I've got a cloud buster. I got to put it back up. But yeah, I've looked into Oregon, certainly. So actually, here's something interesting. So I'm going to bring this up. So Missouri man, you say Oregon Energy, but then he says, natives always spoke of buildings of the ancients where night never was. So here's the cool thing. You mentioned the natives, okay? And so you mentioned the natives. So there's something I want to kind of show you. Let's see, right here. Nope, not yet. Not there. Where was it? The post. Let me 1 second. Let me find this window real quick, because I want to show you something about the native. Okay, so now again, take this all with a grain of salt. Okay, but there's a book that this guy describes it. This guy, Ben Wehrman. Okay, so there's this book which I'm going to show you the pages of it. Okay, so this book, because you ask yourself, because I saw someone mention saying, my grandparents were alive during the time. Yeah, and this is the thing is like kind of getting into how would they make this information change? How would they disappear this information? It's a good question. I want to look at this because you'd think, okay, well, if the Native Americans were around, which they were, wouldn't they have some interaction with this civilization? So this is an interesting thing. So there's this woman, I'm not going to pronounce her Indian name, all right, Lucy Thompson. She wrote a book just called To the American Indian. So she is, pardon me, she's a highly renowned historian of the Yurok Indian tribe, which is a subgroup of a tribe in Northern California. And in this book she wrote, she details a highly advanced race of people that already inhabited North America when the Indians arrived. Okay? So, sorry, let me spray my throat real quick. Okay, so this is her book. Okay, this is beginning of chapter 4, Traditions of the Ancient White People. Now, keep in mind this book was written in, what was it? Where did she write this book? Oh, I'll find out. Okay, but she says, when the Indians first made their appearance on the Klamath River, it was already inhabited by a white race of people known among us as the Wagas. These white people were found to inhabit the entire continent and were a highly moral and civilized race. They heartily welcomed the Indians to their country and taught us all their arts and sciences. The Indians recognized the rights of these ancient people as the first possessors of the soil, and no difficulties ever arose between the two people. Okay, and she's describing, the life with them, right? Talking about how they had this golden age of happiness, and so anyway, and then they left, right? So she doesn't get into it in particular, but she goes on and on. She gets into giants and other things in here too. But again, if you start looking, if you start digging, you can find some of this older information that's been passed down. Okay. So let me go back over to the chats. Okay. Yeah, Rumble, you look at what, over 5,000 over on Rumble. Good to see you all on Rumble. Actually, I didn't check how many are over on YouTube. Let me see. And see if hopefully it doesn't start playing. 1 second. Just going to check out our YouTube crowd. Yeah, almost 300 on YouTube. Hey, good. Hello, YouTube people. So yeah. Yep. Okay. I mean, it's great. I mean, it seems like I mean, it seems like most of you that are watching this show are pretty on the same point with me. The Smithsonian, that's a whole different, they're just like the Men in Black. They show up and they make sure that they erase whatever history, right? Whatever you think you find. Okay. Anyway, continuing. Now, I've got a couple different videos. Let me see if I'll pull. I have a few different videos to show you. Because then we're going to be talking about the orphan trains and the insane asylums. Not as in detail as the World's Fairs. But let me find my other links here. Let's see. So here's a little video I found. These are just a couple different videos that they summarize and they say some of the similar things I'm talking about, but just hear it from someone else. So this is a video. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds. This is specifically about the Chicago World's Fair. Okay, let me play this for you. It's it's 1.5 minutes, and it has audio narration for the podcast listeners, but there's pictures you won't be able to see.
This was Paradise Lost. The 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Over 690 acres, 27 million visitors in a 6-month span. Over 200 buildings built in less than 2 years. If that would be true, that would be an average of about 9 buildings a month they would need to pull out. Not to mention the massive canal system, all the facilities, all the full-grown trees and shrubbery, the Palace of Fine Arts, or as it's known today, the Museum of Science and Industry, is one of the only remnants left of this beautiful fair. I believe these were anything but temporary. The only construction I believe was done was renovations of the old world ruins that were already there. Maybe slap some new white paint on it and call it go, to present the narrative to the new inheritors on the land. 22 million brainwashed masses ready to go back home and spread the narrative. And after they tore down this massive fair that only lasted 6 months, they had another one next year in San Francisco. They were a yearly occurrence, they say. To me, these impossibilities prove history is nothing more than a set of lies agreed upon. Question everything, friends. Until next time.
Yeah, I like this guy's little presentation there. But so I also want to bring up the Capitol buildings. Okay, so this is part of the overall idea of this is that so if you look at America, right? So obviously, we're born and we're raised, and you see, okay, that's the White House, that's the Capitol building, that's the Lincoln Memorial. And you don't think much of these things because it's just like, oh, that's just how it is. But if I'm looking at it objectively, looking at the architecture, and you're looking at, especially getting into Capitol buildings, it's like, yeah, why is it that all these government buildings have this really impressive Romanesque architecture? It doesn't make sense. Right, especially if you look at some of these Capitol buildings, that I'll show some pictures of them, that were built in like the late 1800s, and yet in those regions they have these small little towns and they have these giant Capitol buildings, and so this is also part of the idea with this is that they didn't destroy all of the architecture, but actually some of the buildings they kept, but they turned into government buildings. So I'm going to pull up just a let's see. Here's just a website, just looking at a handful of different Capitol buildings. Okay, so you look at that. Okay, this is Colorado. Okay, pretty impressive. You see, again, it's the same style architecture, like Idaho. I mean, again, we grew up. We're used to this look, but if you look at it from this new framing and you ask yourself, what if this building was already there? Right? What if this building wasn't built by the Americans in the late 1800s? What if they discovered this building or took over it or whatever, and then it became a government property, and that's why it's still standing? Okay, that's that. Okay, here, let's see, which one is this? This is Georgia. And some of these are really impressive. There's Illinois, Kansas, Again, it's like this architecture doesn't exist in America, really. All right, so where'd this all come from? This Kentucky, Missouri. I mean, like, look at this thing. Like, this is just the Missouri State Capitol building. Okay. There's New York, Arkansas, Indiana. I mean, and look at this. It's like, looks like it's a castle. Looks like it's something out of like old Russia or something. Yeah, this is the Capitol building. And okay, there's Mississippi. I think it's Iowa. I think Iowa's the most impressive one. Also Texas. That's Hawaii. It's more contemporary. West Virginia, Minnesota. Yeah, look at Texas. Holy smokes! Look at the size of this thing. It's like you're telling me that like that we built this. Maybe we did. I don't know. I just don't know. But I look at this, and it's just like, you look at this compared, you look at this with the World's Fair information, with all this other stuff, and there's part of me that thinks that, gosh, it kind of makes sense that this building was already there, and that this race before us that was highly skilled, far more advanced than us, they're the ones that built it. We claimed it, right? Then look at this right here. I think this is Iowa. Yeah, Iowa. Like in the I think it was built in the 1870s. I mean, Iowa was just, I probably imagine it's a little farming community. Yeah, this was the Capitol building. This like massive building with these beautiful domes and spires and columns, and they built this like using horse and buggy to move these rocks around, and using hand chisels and shovels to excavate. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem to add up. It doesn't seem to add up. And so, yeah, just question everything. But now I want to talk a little bit about two of the other parts of this, right? One is the insane asylums, and I'm not going to go heavy into it, and then the Cabbage Patch Kids, the orphan trains. I've got a little video. Let me see. Let me pull this up for you. Yeah, I'm going to start this beginning of this. It's a 20-minute video. I'm going to play like the first minute or so. Okay, this is from Ben Werman over on Twitter. Actually, he follows me. Oh, cool. Shout out to Ben. Ben, if you're watching this, shout out to Mr. Ben Werman, who he follows me over there. So I'll send this over to him. Anyway, so just watch this. Okay, this is getting into the insane asylums, right? Because I'll play the video for it. I'll make it maybe 1 or 2 minutes of it, and then we'll talk about it.
Why did insane asylums suddenly explode across the Western world in the mid-1800s? Between 1845 and 1890, massive psychiatric institutions rose in nearly every major city. Enormous stone complexes built with impossible speed and filled almost immediately. Patient records are thin, testimonies vanished, stories dismissed as madness before they were heard. The official explanation is humanitarian reform, the rise of moral treatment, industrialization causing mental strain. But there's another possibility, one never taught, a recent global catastrophe, a lost world quietly erased and rebranded as myth. If such an event occurred, there would have been survivors, people whose memories didn't match the new official story. So the question is this: were the asylums really built to heal, or to disappear those who remembered what came before? In 1800, there were perhaps a dozen dedicated psychiatric institutions in all of North America. By 1880, there were over 300. In Britain, the number jumped from around 20 to over 120 in the same period. France, Germany, Russia, the pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Italy, Spain, the Austro-Hungarian territories, all experiencing the same explosive growth in psychiatric infrastructure within the same compressed time frame. This raises a simple but critical question. Where did all these patients come from? The standard answer points to urbanization, poverty, the pressures of modern life. Industrial capitalism driving people mad. the dissolution of traditional community structures, leaving vulnerable people without support. But here's where it gets strange. The asylum boom doesn't correlate neatly with industrialization. It happens earlier in some places, later in others. Rural areas with minimal industrial development built asylums just as large as those in Manchester or New York. Small towns, places with populations of 15,000 or 20,000, constructed institutions designed to hold 2,000 patients. Communities with no factories, no urban density, no apparent source for mass mental illness. 2,000 patients from towns of 20,000. The math breaks, unless some...
So I'll stop there. But again, if you're getting into the idea of what happened, how did they change this narrative? There's a very strange correlation with these booms and these insane asylums. And these were big buildings, right? So here's a picture of, let's see, this is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, right? This one right here. This is one of the largest that was built. So again, they had these massive insane asylums, but like, why? I mean, it just, it just doesn't really make sense. And there might be different kind of ideas and theories that explain it. But when you look at it again, I really try to, when I'm trying to analyze this information, I do my best to really zoom out and just kind of piece everything together. And I don't come to this absolute truth answer. Okay, this is exactly what happened. But if you look at the patterns, you look at, again, these patterns that were across the world, similar things happening. I think that there's something, I think there's a lot about the history of this world that is just that is an absolute lie. And were the insane asylums, were those part of the process of kind of expunging and removing this information from people of the older generations? Potentially. I don't know. But also you have then the orphan trains. And this is also another weird thing with this that just doesn't, again, you kind of add it up with everything else and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I've got another little video to show you. Let me pull it up here on the orphan trains. Let's see. Okay, so here we go. I'll play about a minute or so of this. I'm not sure who these people are. I guess actually another post from Ben Werman. Actually, so he says, okay, this is a crash course from this guy. Okay, so this is the guy. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to follow you, buddy. So I guess this is from his podcast. But again, I'm going to play about a minute and a half of this because he does a good job of just kind of highlighting some of these orphan train things and talk about this. But just check this out. This is very strange. I don't know.
I want to say between 1860 and 1920, there was 250,000 orphans being shipped around the country on trains in America.
Like the Cabbage Patch Kids?
Well, that's when you get into some weirder stuff where you just see all this art of kids being run in Cabbage Patches, not just like the dolls, but that's where it comes from, is on these old postcards and just this art. They're showing kids being plucked out of cabbage. And, and people like fishing kids out of lakes and pulling them out of wells. It's like the weirdest things. Then you get into like the World Fairs, as you were saying before. They have these incubator babies where they had exhibitions where they had all these preemies in these little, I don't know, incubator kind of things. It's like, it's the weirdest thing you've ever seen. But for some reason, like you have all these aristocrats going to these things and being in awe of premature babies. It's bizarre. It's a little bit grotesque.
I wonder if these resets are like, it got too crazy, so let's just reset everybody.
It seems like that the story of America is mostly a lie, at least the expansion of it. So we were saying, so what about these cities that were quote unquote founded in the 1850s or the 1870s? What if they did just find cities? Like, who would live there? Who would do all the work there? Is it possible that that's why they shipped kids across the country
to do the work,
to potentially be the worker class, and these are the people who are going to eventually populate it? Because if you really think about the logistics of it, how does it make any sense at all that you would take orphans from the East Coast and just ship them out west to do what? And who's taking care of them? That sounds like a lot of 250,000 kids.
Yeah, who's feeding them? Yeah.
You think about that. I want to say in the 1800s, there was only 80 million people, I think, in America, in that range. So you think about like the amount of people, it would be like 250,000 when the population is
lower.
Yeah, and so you had at the same time you had 150,000 people in insane asylums in the United States. Now there's like orphanages as they once were do not exist anymore.
I wonder if the insane asylum people were people that were protesting them changing everything and the Great Reset and saying, I don't agree with this. And they said, well, you're going to go get locked up.
Well, it's possible. One thing we have wondered is like, are these the parents of the kids? You know, 150,000 parents potentially in insane asylums, 250,000 orphans.
Too coincidental.
Anyway, so, good, interesting information there that, again, just kind of adds to the story, adds to the complexity. So I've got one final video I'm going to show you, and then I'll play this. It's a minute long. I will play this for you, and then we'll get into just kind of chatting and everything, because that's the main chunk of information. So this is just again, this is just kind of an overview, just talking about a lot of things I've been covering tonight. This is a minute and 2 seconds long.
They're hiding the true answer to this question from us. How did people who used horses and buggies constructed gigantic, intricate buildings like these? They supposedly only had hammers, handsaws, and basic tools. Does that make sense to you? Look at these massive structures and ask yourself, how did they accomplish all this with such simple tools? It makes you question whether our historical timeline is accurate or if something is being hidden from us. It gets even scarier. What if the dates on these buildings are wrong? What if that one isn't really a one? Our history could be off by 1,000 years. So who built these detailed structures? Have you heard of Tartaria? Tartaria is a colossal empire that conveniently gets left out of mainstream history. But you can never truly erase history, as many references can be found in old maps and documents. Tartaria was a highly advanced civilization with technology and knowledge far beyond what we can imagine. They have credited to have built the Great Wall of China and many of these intricate buildings pictured earlier. Do you think Tartaria holds the secret to a lost part of our history?
Again, good overview. Good. The thing is that I don't spend all my time on this information because I find it so fascinating, but it doesn't really fix to the today, right? And so that's why I'm not just doing only this. I'm really focused on solutions, focused on geopolitics and all these things because I want to understand our current world. But I think the more we know about our history, the more we can make sense of what's happening right now. And I just find this fascinating. It's not just, this is just one small slice of, I think, what you'd call hidden history. If you get into the Nephilim, the Anunnaki, the giants, the pyramids, the Great Flood, there's so much information out there. And so many things that you can see have just been absolutely hidden from us. And so again, reminding you to let me know in the comments or leave a comment, whether you're live chatting or in the comments at, post show, let me know what you think about these topics. Would you love to see me do more of this information? I'm not changing the DNA and the foundation of Man in America, but if you want me to occasionally do some more shows like this, let me know, because I would like to, because to be honest, I find this stuff a lot more fun and exciting than looking into, Epstein blackmail rings with politicians and children. It's important to cover that stuff, but there's something that's kind of refreshing and exciting digging into this kind of hidden history. So let me know what you think. So let me jump over to the chats. Also, just a quick kind of update on the Ark. We're getting very, 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 very close with the Ark. I think maybe in the next 24 hours, we're starting beta testing, meaning people can actually come in. We have a few kind of select users that are going to start actually testing the site. So we're still working nonstop, especially my wife, Kate. She's upstairs right now working on it. She'll probably work till 1 or 2 in the morning on it tonight. But so we're still going full speed ahead with the Ark. So if you're on the wait list, I know that you've been waiting so patiently, and I appreciate that. And so just expect in the next week or two a lot more announcements coming out. And so we're at the very, 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 we're at the 1 yard line. So anyway, okay. So thank you. Okay. So, Ohms on Rumble says, have Michelle Gibson on as a guest. So Kay, if you want to save her name, we can add that. So yes. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. JN over on Rumble says, yes, please do more. Yeah, Lima Bill still needs to do a movie about hidden history. I don't know, actually, I agree, because I've kind of looked at this a lot, and you can't find a single documentary that explains this. I find that a lot of the documentaries on this, like, they get too into the weeds and they're hard to watch. So maybe we'll put together, maybe we do like a mini series on these, like a kind of like a documentary mini series on. I see someone mention the Grand Canyon. Yeah, the Grand Canyon. There's some fun stuff there. Yeah, Grand Canyon. Getting into like what was really going on there. Grand Canyon is one. There's so many things. Yeah, blimps, right? The airships, the Zeppelins. Like that's a whole thing. Looking at the airships and like that's the bells. Right. I've been wanting to do a show on the bells and like. How they got rid of all the bells at one point in history, mud flood. Yeah, there's some cool stuff on this, and so sure. So Kay, I'm sure you're seeing all these comments too, so you can kind of gauge the, gauge this information and kind of get a pulse. So Doug over on Rumble, these topics need to be discussed more often. Yeah, funny. Ricey says, you are our new history teacher. Yeah. Maybe. I guess I kind of look like one of those old history teachers that's kind of sitting in like the classroom, but I'd be a terrible teacher though. I hate schools, though I homeschool. I'll be the homeschool history teacher. Yeah. Let's see what's happening over on YouTube. Yeah, a lot of action over on YouTube too. Great. Oh yes, thank you for interviewing Morley Robbins. Yes, thank you. Interesting. Danielle says my grandfather was at one of the World's Fairs, and you have a glass hatchet. That's cool. Trying to get Stephanie Senef to interview about glyphosate. Yes, okay. Maybe if we'll write her name. I think actually we talked about her actually. Yeah. Yeah, we deserve to know the truth of our history. I agree. That's the thing. How wars fit in with the reset. Yeah, from Susan over on YouTube. Yep. It seems like you'd be like looking at the comments. You all really enjoy this information, and I do too. Like I'm really fascinated with this stuff. I'd love to go in, the Civil War and there's so much stuff on this. There's so much stuff. The Great Pyramids. Yeah, there's a whole host of stuff in the pyramids. This loving. Yeah, my lunch break. Yeah, I reached out to my lunch break to see if he wanted to do an interview. I never heard back from him. I'm not sure if he does interviews. I haven't seen him do any interviews, but yeah, he's great. My lunch break over on YouTube. Yes. Yeah, good conversation over here. Actually, there's one other video. Let me see if give me a second. I'm going to look through and find it. I've had one other video that I wanted. I didn't save it for this episode in particular, but it was one that I thought was interesting. It was a guy that was on Joe Rogan. Here we go. So, I think that we're trying to get him on for an interview. He might be kind of difficult to access. So, this is a guy. He's a screenwriter named Roger Avery. Okay. I want to play this for you really quickly because it really again, it kind of fits into this. So this is it's about 2.5 minutes long. So I'll play this for you, okay? He has some interesting things to say.
It's all fake. I don't think that any history before 1600, I think everything has been falsified before the year 1600.
How so?
Well, there's this guy, Anatoly Fomenko, who's a Russian mathematician and historian. And he wrote a book called The New Chronology. It's actually a series of books. It's like 6 volumes, and I've read them all. And and also his addendum book, The New Chronology. He has an addendum book about it. And he basically says that all of history has been changed. About 1,000 years have been added to the timeline in order to justify land claims, and those land claims largely have to do with the Eurasian horde and the elimination of the Eurasian horde by collusion between the Vatican, the Romanovs,
So you mean like the Mongols and the Huns?
Yeah, there was and if you look on very, very old maps, you see that there used to be a country called Tartaria that was in existence. And at a certain point, they wiped them out. And so his theory, and it's just a theory, it's just a posit, but when you see how history is constantly being rewritten in real time, it's not so hard to believe. And then he uses, astronomical evidence and, mathematically kind of proves it. And he basically says that, let's see if I can get this right, that Rome and Greece and those and Egypt were actually active till around 1600, and that Rome actually fell around 1600. So, kind of imagine, or more like late 1400s, 1492,
as opposed to what's the conventional timeline?
About 1,000 years before. And so, if you can wrap your head around it, the Salem witch trials took place around the same time as the Inquisition. Columbus was discovering America around the time Rome fell, and that all of this was designed to justify or to erase this entire civilization from history.
So that's interesting, because from what he said, and actually, so the author that he talked about that wrote those books, I've been trying to track those books down. They're not really that easy to find, but this Russian mathematician, he's slandered pretty heavily. He's kind of a quack conspiracy theorist, of course they call him, but that's where a lot of this information has come from. Is he pieced together this information and wrote this huge series on this topic. But with what he was just saying in that video I just played you, this guy, about how that supposedly, so if they erased 1,000 years, and that Rome had fallen in like the 1600s or late 1500s or so, and so that when Columbus discovered America, so maybe, again, if these timelines are all kind of out of whack, maybe a lot of these buildings that we're looking at, right? So maybe a lot of these buildings were actually not that was definitely more modern. But it's kind of like, what if these were actually part of a Roman Empire? That the timeline has been changed. It was lied, and that basically that this was here before. Like if Rome fell at that time, then maybe these were part of Roman architecture. I mean, I don't know, right? They don't look like something that these kind of people built with shovels and horses. So anyway, it's interesting stuff. It's, to say the least, it's very interesting information. I love going down these rabbit holes. It's just fascinating. It sucks that so much has been hidden from us, but it also, it's kind of like as a kid, like, my daughter June, she's 5. When her favorite idea is finding treasure, right? We live in the woods, and she'll go out and just dig in the woods, and she'll come back with like a bone. She'll be like, "Oh, I found a bone." It's her treasure, because she loves the idea of just treasure hunting. I think it's part of what's innate to all of us. We love this idea of exploration, and in an age where nothing is new. There's no culture that hasn't been broadcast all over social media, whatever. The idea that we can still discover something hidden, something that was not just hidden, but something that was intentionally hidden from us. And then a entire kind of envelope of lies was created to surround us, to prevent us from seeing that hidden thing. It's kind of a cool process, and I really enjoy it. I like going into this. So anyway, yeah, I saw someone else had asked about, I think it was over on YouTube. It was asking about the Ark. Look, if you've emailed us, I've got your email. A lot of people, we've got, I think, close to 14,000 people on the waiting list, and a lot of people were emailing. So they wanted to get in on the first kind of round of things with the Ark. So if you emailed, I've got your email saved. You're in the in group, so you don't have to worry about it. You'll be hearing from us within the next week or two. Like I think that's around where we're at with the timeline. So just, yeah, thank you for your patience on the Ark. It's something that we're looking forward to. Yeah, okay. Well, I think that, well, actually, let me go check and see if I've got any questions that Kay set aside for me. 1 second, let me pull up my, okay, let me see here. I'm looking through some questions that Juro Y on Rumble says, Seth, please go back further in time. Petra, Tiwanaku, 15,000 AD. I'd love to start looking at this stuff. And I've seen that a handful of you have recommended people, and maybe hopefully, Kay, you're capturing some of these names. Someone said there's a guy named like Exploring World History, I think, that they said did interviews. Old World Exploration on YouTube. I guess does interviews. That's from Susan over on YouTube. So we'll check him out. I love the feedback too. I've got some I'll pull, these are some comments that Kay has set aside for me. Great. Good feedback. I appreciate this. Cause obviously, I do what matters to me, but I also want to make sure that I'm producing content. I'm covering topics that, are things that you're interested in as well. So like Bacon Commander on YouTube. Awesome. Love your name. I had bacon for breakfast today. So thank you. Blue Wolf, good evening, Seth. Great to see you. Just stopping in briefly. Still getting used to you having a Sunday night live show and making change on my end so I can join you while you're live. Well, thank you for doing that. Electricity, I think that in terms of how to light up with electricity, I think there's already electricity in America. I think that was sometime mid 1800s, I think, when they first, I researched it a little bit before, but I forgot it now. Yeah. Anyway, so I just want to thank everyone for being here. Atlantis. That's a good one too. Kind of diving into Atlantis would be a lot of fun. I really like this stuff. Then you get into the ice wall, and there's some interesting stuff with that too. Getting into Antarctica. There's so much interesting stuff to go out there and look at. Okay, let's check out over on YouTube. I love seeing how active YouTube is. It's great. We've got around 300 over on YouTube. Let's see, Rumble, we're at almost 6,500 on Rumble. So great crowd. Thank you everyone for being here. Yeah, there we go. I see someone mentioning Dave. Maybe you're mentioning Flat Earth Dave. I did a 3-hour interview with him a couple of years ago. Fascinating guy. Yeah, fascinating guy. Okay. Well, I think that we're going to start winding down. Thank you, My Savior JC. Such a great show tonight. Thank you. I enjoyed this. I really, really enjoyed this. Nephilim. I'd love to do some stuff on the Nephilim. There's a good one. Let's see. EJC Missy Mom over on Rumble. Seth, love your shows. Love how you think. It makes me feel less wacky. Well, if I can make you feel less wacky, great. I feel like I'm a pretty wacky guy. Thank you, Tomahawk. Yeah. Yeah, take the girls for ice cream on me. I will, actually. Thank you, Tomahawk. And so Friday night is always our movie night for the kids, and they get ice cream. And so, yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm going to screenshot that one so I can show it to my little ones. Thank you. Yeah, Atlantis. Yeah, hello there. Yeah, so he says, glad to hear YouTubers are waking up. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I love seeing it. Actually, YouTube is. I'm glad that something is opening up on YouTube. Actually, a lot of credit goes to Kay and her team doing amazing work over there. But yeah. My Savior, Seth put out some homeschool stuff, links or something. Eventually I will. I'll start covering more of that. Right, right now my girls are 2 and 5, so we're not really doing like the more structured homeschool. Homeschool is just, hey, let's go play in the woods together. Let's go build a fort in the woods. That's my homeschool. Hello there, says you're a calming voice. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay. I see. So, okay, the Gobekli Tepe. I've been seeing that pop up. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that was the. Okay, I'll look at that. Yeah, the ancient architecture in Turkey. Okay. Great. Yeah, we'll go back over to YouTube. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Okay, so LTK Winters on YouTube says, Seth, if you can have Dan Duvall on about pre-ademic history. Okay, yeah, so Kay, if you'll write that name down. Kay, we've gotten some good names. We've got some great leads here. And I know, look, I know the YouTube crowd is very awake. I know you are. I think the key is that people are finding me now on YouTube, right? And YouTube is a lot of people that aren't awake, right? So over on Rumble, most people on Rumble are pretty kind of aware. I mean, I kind of speak loosely about that, but there's a lot of people on YouTube that don't come across this stuff very often. And I know that there's some really good channels on YouTube. I'm not kind of cracking down on YouTube. I'm not kind of bashing YouTube. I think there's a lot of amazing people on YouTube, some good channels, a lot of good stuff like this on YouTube. So yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, Jack Krause, I think, I've been trying to get him on, Dr. Jack Krause. I've been trying to get him on. Not easy to get him on. But I'm trying. So, okay. Well, I think that's it for tonight. Just a reminder. So I talked about the Ark. If you want to, so the Ark, to give you the really quick kind of pitch for it. So what it is we're building is it's a private social media platform that we're building, completely private, members only. It's going to have a whole host of amazing stuff. A lot of it is really built upon kind of building your own Ark. So preparedness topics, gardening, but more importantly, it's about building relationships with people. So we have we have local little chapters and everything, and there's a lot going into it. So if you want to join the wait list for the Ark, just go to buildtheark.com. Right? It says build the Ark, ARK, buildtheark.com to join the waiting list. Right now, I mentioned we're at about 14,000 people on the waiting list. And we're trying, we're working so hard to get it ready for you. So that's coming very, very soon. Very, very, very soon. So, okay. Also, Ash Brooks says no to Duvall. Okay, so hey, thank you. We'll make sure we vet him as a guest, as a potential guest. All right, so YouTube, good night, everyone on YouTube. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Oh, thank you, Alpine Retreat. Yeah. I love how long it takes you to end a show. LOL, I'm as reluctant as you are. Thank you all. Thank you again for all your work. A great community we have here. It's a great community, isn't it? You're a bunch of really wonderful people. Yeah, honestly, you look at a lot of these chats on these channels and everyone's arguing and they're swearing and I just see this. It's like, this is a wonderful discussion. Yeah, it's a wonderful discussion. Just good people. Yeah, good people. I really appreciate you all being here. So that's it. Yeah, make sure you share the video. If you're watching it, make sure you share it with someone. That always helps. Yeah, all that good stuff. So thank you all. Have a beautiful and wonderful night. We have some really good interviews. I've got an interview with John Hamer coming out. So he's the guy that wrote So he's the author. This is one of his books. He wrote the Falsification of History, the Falsification of Science. Like, smart guy. I've got his interview coming out maybe this week even. Had a great discussion with him. So anyway, so John Hamer interview's coming out, and yeah, we have a lot of good stuff coming on. Let's do a segment on beard grooming. Actually, yeah, sourmectin. Actually, I did trim my beard up a little bit before the show tonight. It was getting kind of unruly. It was a little bit too much. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Take care. God bless. I'll see you soon. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you follow the channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or if you have an account with Apple Podcasts and you want to do me a favor, go leave a good review on there. It really helps me out. And that's it. Yeah, Stella, Seth, I love your positivity. It's just how I am. I'm just like, my house could burn down, knock on wood, and I'll be like, it's okay. We're going to build a new one, right? It's just, that's how you live. Also, Hemp Car, thank you very much for that donation. Yes, thank you. So, all right. Yeah, and Bender Rocks, good to see you here, buddy, too. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I'll see you next time.